Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a good day. We're going to jump right in here. I'm sure some people are going to join us in a minute. But we wanted to come on here and tell our experience as a family who recently had a sick family member. Those of you who know us know Mom was in hospital recently. And so we wanted to tell our story and I guess how things were inside of the hospital setting and stuff during the COVID restrictions. Certainly very different from normal hospital experience. So my sister's going to start. She was the one who actually admitted Mom. So she's going to tell you how that went, and then I'll cut in after.
So as probably most of you know, Mom has a lot of respiratory problems, and back quite a few years ago, she did have a stroke, and she's had a lot of health problems, and we've had a lot of experience, sadly, with Mom being in hospital, and we've always been able to do it together as a team, with family members visiting, aunts and cousins being able to drop in and be able to take a little bit of pressure off of us while when Wendy was working or I was working or whatever. And of course, during Mom's last experience in hospital, we were not able to do that. So when Mom got really sick, it takes her a lot of convincing to get her to go to hospital.
She's very stubborn.
And Wendy sort of put her foot down, because sometimes I can be a bit too soft with Mom. I guess because I'm still living in the same house as her and whatever.
She got to live with her.
So anyway, Wendy had basically convinced her and told her she wasn't getting an option, she was going. So we both went to Emerge with Mom. We were both not allowed in. So I decided I would go because I was used to Mom's medications and things like that. So I went with her. At first they weren't going to let me stay, and I had mentioned about Mom's mobility restrictions. Most recently, Mom fell and broke her arm, so she doesn't have a lot of use in one of her arms. So even standing up and trying to balance herself, like, she needed somebody there. So I was a bit persistent, and I had asked to be able to stay, and they allowed me to stay out in the emergency part until she got inside to see the nurses and the doctors. And so while we were there, we waited. Of course, Mom was seen in triage, and I kept in contact with Wendy through text message, did we do...
I was on the parking lot.
Yeah, that's right. I was back and you stayed in the parking lot. And so anyway, they checked all Mom's vitals and did everything they had to do. So let's jump into now when she was inside in Emerge, and they finally got her in a room.
Not a hospital room.
It wasn't a hospital room. It was, I guess, like a waiting family room. And I had one of those push chairs for Mom that you paid $1 for downstairs where the blood clinic and stuff is too, because there was no wheelchairs or anything available. So we had her inside, waited there. They come in and they checked her blood pressure and her oxygen levels and done all kinds of different things. And we were out in that part, I suppose, we must have been out there maybe 3 hours, I guess, out in that particular part before they got her inside to see a doctor and got her in a bed. And so when we finally got her inside and she was settled up on the actual bed itself, she came, there was nurses and stuff came back and forth. So I done a lot of listening to everything that was around. At one point, one of the nurses had come in and said to me that I wasn't allowed to stay.
After being there about 2 or 3 hours.
After already being there. It's because I left that spot to go use the washroom. And I guess I got caught out in the hallway. And so they had mentioned no family, no people are allowed to be there with people who were in Emerge. And I didn't get snotty with anyone. I didn't say anything that was like really nasty but I made my point clear that I needed to stay there with Mom, that I need to be there. I said, she can't speak for herself. And she said, the nurse had said to me, she can't physically, verbally express herself. I said, yes, she can, but she's not going to be able to tell you the medication she takes. She's not going to be able to tell you, all of her day-to-day things, because she do get confused sometimes. So I insisted on staying, which I did.
And for physical reasons.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. Like
Mom, if mom needs a drink of water, you got to stop her off because she got no strength in her arms, or if she needs to go to the bathroom, she needs help.
Especially at that point,
because she was feeling so sick.
She was so sick then, right? She was really weak. So anyway, we were inside, like I said, and she said, "Well, I'll have to speak with." The nurse had said, "Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous speaking." Get my words tangled up.
You're doing good.
So the nurse had said, "Well, I'm going to have to go speak with management about you being allowed to stay." And with that, she sort of left. And I never heard from anyone after telling me that I had to leave, which I was grateful for. I had even texted Wendy in between and said, "I think they're going to make me leave." And Wendy was like, "Put your foot down. Tell them like you're not leaving." And so anyway, while we were waiting to get to part of, like, I guess the saddest part, I guess for me, while Mom was there with me and she had me there for support, I had seen a lot of really sad stuff while I was there because of the level 5 restrictions with COVID-19. Most people were not allowed to have a support person with them in emergency. And
it's wrong.
I had seen so much stuff. I just want to mention 2 different things that I had seen. I had seen an elderly lady who was, I'm going to say she was every bit of late 80s, early 90s. Very, very weak and very mini. I don't know how to say that. She was a really tiny, frail older lady. Knitted cap on her head, just barely had like a little cardigan on, leaned over, had her head kind of leaned over in a chair, that was in a room that was where bedpans and things like that were too. They didn't even have a bed to give this old lady. She could just, I don't mean old lady, older lady, sorry. She could just keep her head up. She could literally just keep her head from bowing down, right? She was so weak. There by herself, no support person at all.
If she'd have fallen into that chair, there was no one there to catch her.
She was in just like a regular chair. Like, it wasn't even like a wheelchair or anything. It was just like a regular fold-up chair or something.
In a storage room.
So then the other thing that I had heard while I was there, like I said, I was sat with Mom, but the other patients didn't have anyone. So there was this older gentleman who had came in with spitting up blood. He felt there was blood coming from his lungs. And, well, to make a long story short, they had basically told him while he was there by himself with nobody, and I got to stress that it's likely you have some form of lung cancer. And he didn't know what to say. I didn't see this man. I can't tell you who he was. I don't know. I just know what I had heard. He had to make a phone call after he was given this news from a doctor that it's very likely that you have some form of lung cancer. He called his sister and he called her by name. And he said, "You're going to have to bring me over a bit of clothes." He said, "I'm going to have to stay in." And he didn't tell her anything. She wasn't allowed to come see him. And he didn't tell her anything on the phone. But just to know that he was there by himself and had this horrible news and couldn't be there with family.
No one to support you. Like, can you imagine?
I can't imagine, like, Mom being there and somebody coming telling her stuff like that. Mom or Dad, anyone in our family, like, it's not fair. It's just not fair. So that was, like, my experience, I guess, while I was in emergency with Mom. When they finally brought her upstairs and she was admitted and got a bed, I wasn't allowed to go up with her. Nurses from, I think it was the 5th floor at first she had went to, come down for her. I was crying to break my heart, like really, really upset. And the nurses were best kind, like perfect. You couldn't ask for better, like really, really understanding, and said, we understand because we've been going through this with other patients and we know how hard it is for the family. And one of the nurses even said to me, she says, "I'm really soft-hearted too." She said, I'm a bit sucky, and that's what I said to her, that I was really sucky about it, that I couldn't go upstairs with Mom. And so they took her and they went on. With that, we didn't know if we were going to see her anymore for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We had no idea. We left her with a prepaid cell phone that her and dad uses on an emergency basis. And at that time, mom was so weak she could rarely even pick up the phone like to call us. She was just sick, obviously. She was being admitted to hospital. So then Wendy took over from there. I'm going to let Wendy speak on what happened, I guess, from there, right?
So mom requires a lot of assistance on a good day. I'm going to cry. Okay, I'm sorry. This really took a toll on our family. Okay, I'm good. So mom requires a lot of assistance on a good day. Of course, like Ange said, she was very weak, very tired. So the reason she got admitted, for those of you who don't know, mom got asthma and COPD, and she retains fluid. Sometimes she takes fluid pills every day, but sometimes they're just not enough. Sorry, I'm going to be okay in a minute. This was a really hard experience, and it's hard to talk about. But anyway, this is why we wanted to come live, so we could tell it as it is. No filters, no, we're very real here. So, mom retains fluid. Ever so often, her fluid pills are not enough. It builds... Don't say stuff like that, Jennifer. You make me worse. I'm going to put these comments off because I can't read them. Okay. I'm going to read your comments after, guys. So anyway, ever so often it builds up on her chest, and she has to be admitted to hospital for what I'll call like hospital strength fluid pills, because what she takes at home is not enough. So this was why she was admitted. We were checking in with her several times a day, with the nurses at least a couple of times a day. How's she doing? Is she eating? Is she getting any better? Things like that. Her breathing was starting to improve, which was good. But on about day 5, I think it was. It was on a Tuesday. She got admitted on Friday. Monday night we spoke to her. She was fine. She was starting to feel a little bit better. Her breathing was getting better. She was talking fine. She was herself. So, on Tuesday morning, when I spoke to her, she was a different person. She couldn't get her words out.
She couldn't express herself at all.
She was very lethargic.
Yeah.
Like, very, very, we'd ask her and we couldn't get a response from her, right? So
I remember at one point that I had spoke to her and I was like, Mom, yes, my darling. I'm like, Mom, did you eat today? And she didn't know that I was asking her that question. And I was like, Mom, yes, my darling. That's it. That's all we got from her. We couldn't get anything else from her.
And we were asking the nurses. First off, I want to say, we're not blaming the nurses here, and you'll understand more as this goes on.
Definitely not.
They are worked to death. My nursing friends and clients, I would not want your job right now.
No.
They are worked to death. They're worked to death on a normal basis, but when you add in a pandemic and the family is not allowed in to take some of the burden off the nurses, I can't imagine what they're going through. So we're not blaming them. But we were checking in several times a day with mom and with the nurses, and they'd say, oh yeah, she's eating well and she's doing this and that and whatever. And so mom had taken this very strange turn on Tuesday morning, and she wasn't making sense and couldn't get her words out, and I started to freak out. So I got on the phone and I asked around. I said, who do I speak to get into this hospital? I need to go see mom. Who can let me in there? So I was given some names, and thanks be the Lord,
She was granted special permission. They call it a support person, so that Wendy was allowed to go and visit with mom and be with mom. They allowed her from 11 o'clock in the morning until, was it 7 o'clock in the night?
Until 7.
Until 7 in the night. And at that first day, Wendy never found out until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon that she was going to be allowed to go. And Wendy and I had discussed who it was going to be. And just to make a family decide who that person is going to be, that's hard enough. For us, it was a little bit of an easier decision.
Because
Wendy's salon was closed and I was working. So it obviously was an easier decision for us. But had 2 of us been available, how could we make that decision? Which person was more important? Not even more important, but who were we going to decide who was going to be? And it happened to be that it was Wendy. Wendy was off that time, so it was an easy decision. And at that point, I didn't care who it was going to be, as long as one of us could go be there and be with mom and help her and see what was going on.
That was our last week of this second lockdown we had back last month, right? Mom's been home about 3 weeks now.
Roughly.
I think about 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. Yes.
So I'm sorry for the crying. I'm an emotional person. So anyone who knows me knows that. But I'll get it out eventually. So so I got on the phone. Like I said, I got permission. Thank God. Thank you, Melissa, and the ones who helped me. I was mortified. Mortified at what I seen.
Wendy's seen it all. I didn't even get to see
When
it.
I walked in Mom's room. I really can't talk about this, but I have to. This is so important. First off, I'm not blaming the nurses. I'm really, truly not. Please don't take this offensive, okay? Because this is not what I mean. They did their best. They worked to death. But for starters, and I don't know how to say this without, hopefully you guys don't take offense, but Mom was very neglected. Not by the nursing staff specifically. It's not that they weren't doing their job. There's just not enough of them to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
They kept her alive, which thank God for that, but they didn't take care of her, if that makes sense.
We had even stressed a couple of times. I remember how many times I had called down speaking with Mom's doctor and with the nurses. Every nurse that I spoke with, I stressed she needs to get out of bed. Mom has mobility issues already, and she needs to get out of bed. She has to get out. Like, she had a catheter in while she was in hospital because of the fluid pills. She would have been out every 10 minutes to pee. I totally get that. But once or twice a day, take her out of bed. Sit her up on the side of the bed, put her in a chair, get her to use a walker, and get her to walk down the hallway. Like, just get her out of bed. And they didn't. They didn't for several reasons. One of them probably because they never had time to do it. And so that was something Wendy had to deal with when she got there.
The first
Mom
thing
was weak.
The first thing I noticed when I walked in her room, she could literally not get her mouth open. She was so thirsty that her mouth was stuck together. She could get one corner of her mouth open. I literally had to take a face cloth and wash her lips and her mouth to unstick it. That's how thirsty she was. I'm not saying the nurses didn't give her a drink. When they come in 2 or 3 times a day, however many times it is, to bring in your medication and check your vitals, they gave her what she asked for. But when your mobility is as challenged as Mom is, you need full-time care, which is the full-time care that we provide at home. Mm-hmm. And every other time she's been in hospital, we do it too. We take shifts sitting by her bed. We make sure there's someone there from all the hours we're allowed to visit. There's someone there. So she gets enough to drink. She gets up when she needs to. We can help change her clothes. We can keep her company. Like, all these things that we would normally do. The nurses just don't have time to do it the way you would if you were there with your own family member. And let's face it, the family can take a lot of the burden off the nurses. I'm sure there's times they add more stress too. I don't doubt that for a second. And the nurses were phenomenal. Like, they were worked to death. I'm not saying that they didn't take care of Mom. They did the best they could do with so little hands and so many people to take care of. But this is why we wanted to come on here, because thank God we're in alert level 2 right now. If we ever at some point go back in alert level 5, we wanted to speak out, and hopefully this can make a difference in some way, that maybe some other family doesn't have to go through what we went through. That if someone gets admitted into hospital and they're seriously ill, they should be allowed to have at least one support person to sit by their bed all day long if that's what it takes. And help them get a drink, help them eat, change their clothes when they want to, take them for a walk, whatever the case might be, that the nurses don't have time. The nurse's job is very important, and they do the best they can. There's just not enough of them to do these little things.
And not only that, too, Wendy spent a lot of time with Mom when she was on the ward, whenever she was allowed. And then Mom got admitted to intensive care. And how many days was she in intensive care before you were allowed to go in there?
I'm going to backtrack a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So when I went in on that Tuesday, like, I called Angela. I remember saying, Angela, like, Mom is not right. There's something going on here. Like, I thought she had a stroke because she couldn't get her words out and she couldn't keep her eyes open. And it was just very, very strange. So I started speaking to every nurse I seen, asking, has she been checked for signs of a stroke and things like that. And, they weren't really giving me a straight answer, because not every nurse knows what the other nurse did. You know what I mean? And they'd say, like, I don't think there's been any signs of that and whatever. We left messages for the doctor. to call us. We needed to speak about mom's situation and whatever, and was getting worse. This was on Tuesday. It was Thursday before we finally heard from the doctor. The doctor called my sister and said, I'm very concerned about your mom. She's very lethargic. She's not getting her words out, whatever. So, of course, we had thought things had gotten worse because I'd seen her on Tuesday. We've been telling them this since Tuesday.
Yeah.
And now it's Thursday and the doctor is finally addressing it. So, and no disrespect to the doctor. I know she's really, really busy too. She was great. We really liked her. But, things didn't happen I guess they happened as best as they could in the situation, but this is our problem here, right? So anyway, when they finally tested her, took her out to see why she was like that, anyone who knows medical stuff, they would understand her carbon dioxide levels were almost triple. A normal healthy person is around 30-ish. 40 is, from what I can understand, is acceptable. Mom was at 100. Which was really weird. And
that's why she was so loopy and so out of it.
So it's your blood gases, something to do with your blood gases. And this is why she had gotten so weird and loopy and whatever. So first thing they do was rush her as quick as they can out to ICU. And of course, I was like, oh my God, like what's happening now, right? And then I walked behind her bed as they were pushing her out to ICU. And when they got her in, they told me I had to leave. Of course, that was like a kick in the guts. Because here I am, I've only had 2 days with her. She'd already been there 5 days on her own. And nowadays, because in ICU, it's one nurse per one patient. So they don't allow a family support person. So we had to depend on the nurse to do, keep us updated and things like that. The nurses were wonderful out there. I'm not complaining about them. They were really good.
Just busy.
Really busy, right? ICU was a little better because it's one patient per one nurse. So they can give you the one-on-one care, right? So anyway, we kept in touch every day and stuff, and the nurses were keeping us updated on what was happening. And as her breathing got a bit better and her levels started to come down, she started to get more clear. So after about 5 days of that, Mom, she was ready to come back on the ward after 3 days, I think it was. And then
but they didn't have a bed.
They didn't have a bed, so they had to keep her an extra couple of days. But Mom,
her mental health started to ruin. Right. That's what you were going to get to next.
Yeah, I was just going to say Mom started to get very, very depressed. And this was like almost 2 weeks in hospital, very little family. She only had me there for 2 days. Your medication's all over the place. You're not sleeping properly. You know how you're feeling, right? So Mom had gotten very, very depressed. And I got on the phone again. And I said, is there any way I can get a visit, even if it's just for an hour? Like, just let me in to check on her to make sure she's okay and let her know that we still loves her. We haven't forgotten about her because she was feeling so lost.
And she couldn't talk to us properly either, right?
And
she couldn't.
You don't even sleep properly in hospital because when you get settled, the beds are so uncomfortable. When you do finally get settled, they're checking your oxygen and all these things, so you're constantly being woke up. So she was just really, really, really in a bad state. So thankfully, thank you, Tanya, if you're ever watching. I got permission again to get in, and I went in, and she was happy to see me, just like kind of normal. And I brought her in her cold water. We brought her in things like that because Mom likes really icy water. And brought her, sat down, and I was like, Mom, I thought you'd be a little happier to see me. She said, sure, you was only here yesterday. I said, Mom, you've been here 5 days. She said, what? Really? Yes, you've been here 5 days, and I wasn't allowed in.
She certainly didn't say it as clear as that, though.
No.
Right? She was still kind of groggy.
A lot better than what she was. She was definitely making improvements, but she was still very confused and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so while she was in ICU, she had what they call ICU psychosis. She started seeing very strange things and told us that her sister, anyone who knows Aunt Joan will laugh at this, said that Aunt Joan was in and got upset with the nurses and beat the place up. And she's seen this little old lady take a nap in the windowsill, like weird little things like that, right?
And how they had come and cooked a big turkey dinner and shared with all the patients.
Right, yeah.
Mom actually believed all that. And to this day,
she still
thinks that stuff have happened.
You can't convince her that little old lady didn't take a nap in the windowsill.
Yeah.
Because it was so real to her, right?
That's right.
But this just tells you the state of mind that she was in and stuff, right? So this was just a really, really trying experience for our family and for Mom especially. Hard. We're 3 weeks later now, and Mom's mental health is still not where it should be. It was an extremely traumatic experience on her. She thought she was dying, and she thought she was dying alone. I can't even say that. She thought she was dying alone. And this is the thing. People are dying alone because of COVID. I understand. Look, I'm not an anti-masker. I'm not an anti-lockdown. I agree with lockdowns. I agree with masking, social distancing, no large gatherings. I 100% agree with all of that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to people sick and dying, these rules need to change. Yeah. Right now we're in level 2, so people can have their family and have a support person. We could be back in level 5 tomorrow. We don't know that. So this is why we wanted to speak out and hopefully get the attention of Dr. Fitzgerald or Dr. Haggie or whoever makes these decisions so they can see it from a family's perspective on the inside.
Family needs people around. Sick family needs people around. There was one lady who was in the hospital room with Mom, that Wendy, that I thought you were going to speak on a little bit.
I'm going to.
She had nobody there. That's just one person that Wendy was able to get to see. She had nobody.
So when Mom came out of ICU and went back on the ward, she was on the 7th floor. And I walked, there was this little tiny little woman. She might have been 70 pounds, 80, at least probably 80 years old, curled up in the corner of the bed. I didn't see her move for the 2 days Mom was in the room with her. The woman had dementia. You could very clearly tell that. She said weird things, and I know she was from Rocky Harbor. That's all I know, because she kept asking about Rocky Harbor. But she could physically feed herself, but she didn't know she needed to, if that makes sense. Her mind didn't tell her she was hungry. She didn't know you need to eat to survive, right? Her mind was so gone that, so like, you know, if her mind was okay and you put her food in front of her, she'd manage to get a bit in her mouth. But she didn't know she needed to. Now, I'm going to give credit. I did see the nurse come in once. I only seen it once. Now, it may have happened more than once. But I seen her come in one time and try to feed this little woman. And the woman didn't want it. The nurse stood there for maybe 3 or 4 minutes and tried to get her to eat a bit of her supper and a bit of her ice cream, and she didn't want no part of it. I totally understand that nurse was extremely busy, and she didn't have time to sit there for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 and shove a bite of food in that woman's mouth every now and again to keep her alive.
Like you had to do with Mom.
I was shoving baby tomatoes in Mom's mouth even when she didn't want them.
That's true. Mom had no appetite. She had absolutely no appetite. She had no interest in anything. Mom lost 44 pounds in 3 weeks. Now, granted, a lot of that was fluid. That's why she had went in. But no doubt, a lot of that was actual pounds of weight as well, because she hadn't eaten in such a long period of time. But when Wendy was there, Wendy insisted, no, Mom, now I need you to eat this. Eat half of this and you'll be fine. Like, whatever, you know.
And even then, she ate very little. But the thing is, the nurse did try her best to get that woman to eat. If that woman was allowed to have a family member, supposing they were all day long shoving a spoonful of pudding or yogurt or something in her mouth to get her to swallow it, you'd manage to get enough in her by the end of the day. The nurse didn't have time to sit there. She had dozens of other patients to see to. She was busy. I'm not blaming her. She really tried her best. She didn't have time to wait there any longer because the woman wasn't eating it. So, but this is my whole point though. Like, if the family were allowed in, they'd make sure, like I said, if it took all day, you'd get something into them, right? And I'm going to tell you something. That woman will die of starvation. They'll call it something else. They'll say her heart gave out or it was age or whatever. She's going to die of starvation. If someone doesn't take over and sit by her bed, which is what she needs, she's going to die of starvation. So if we ever, God forbid we don't, but if we ever go back to alert level 5, we want to, hopefully we can get this video out there. So please share away, comment, post, share, whatever. Tag whoever you might know that might be able to make these decisions or whatever. Hopefully they'll take this into consideration so people don't have to be sick and die alone.
And get horrible news alone.
Exactly.
And spend hours and days and weeks and God forbid months in hospital rooms and hospital beds and not have people around them. And besides the actual health part, it's people's mental health too, because I'm sure there's people in those hospital rooms and hospital beds that gave up on eating or gave up on interest in anything else because they were so depressed because they couldn't see their family members and their friends and have somebody there with them. So hopefully, if it ever has to go back to level 5, that everyone will be allowed to have at least one support person and be able to have someone come in and be there with them. It's a lot to put on one person as well. But at least they'd have that one person.
One is better than nothing.
Right, exactly. I get they don't want to have a crowd of people traipsing through the hospital and whatever. But
the thing is too, like when I was allowed in, I wasn't allowed to leave her room. That was the rule. I wasn't allowed out in the hallway. I wasn't allowed out to use the public washroom. I wasn't allowed to go to my car to get anything. So it's not like you're in there and you're mixing with other people. When I was allowed in, I went straight to her room and straight back out when I left. So it's not like you're out mixing and if you were sick, you're going to spread it. I had to wear a mask. I had to clean my hands, and I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. I had to put on a gown or whatever they wanted me to do, just as long as I could be there to take care of Mom. And the problem is, people are sick and dying alone, and it's wrong. It's so, so wrong that any sick person should have. I know people who've lost family members recently and they died alone because we were in alert level 5. And like Dr. Fitzgerald or Dr. Hagee, like if you happen to come across this video at some point, I really hope you guys will reconsider the whole no visitor rule, no matter what alert level we're in.
No matter what alert level.
Because it's wrong. If it was a younger person who was able-bodied to take care of themselves and was only going to be in hospital for a few days or something like that, I can totally understand it.
Yes.
You know, I can totally understand it. But if someone requires support at home, whether it be physically or mentally, they should be allowed to have it in hospital, no matter what.
Absolutely. 10,000%.
That's just our opinion from this whole experience.
So share our video.
Please.
Give us your thoughts.
Please comment.
Pass the word along. We waited a little while to do this video. We wanted to do it almost immediately as soon as Mom came out. But we wanted her to start to feel a lot better and everything first. And we really don't want to try to cause a stir with anybody at the hospital.
No.
Because they really did. I mean, I called down... Well, not just me. We all called several times.
And
some
nurses
of Mom's
were
sisters
excellent.
called down to check and spoke to the nurses and got the information. Dad called. Wendy called. I called. And they always gave us the information that we had needed. And they always spoke to us.
And they're excellent.
But they were just busy.
Yes.
Just too busy for the work that needed to be done there with the patients.
They're overworked, and they're like you hear the old expression, overworked and underpaid. And that is so true, because their job is so, so important and so valuable. And when you're not giving them the ability to do their job properly, you're doing them an injustice and their patients an injustice.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks for
sorry about all the tears, but that's just me. Anyone who knows me, I've had clients and I've cried in their arms. That's just the way it is. But it's real. We didn't practice this. We didn't plan it. We just wanted to come here and put it out.
Yeah.
So, it's very real. Please share this video. Our total love and respect to the hospital staff. You guys really did do an amazing job, the best you could to your ability. The problem is there's not enough of you.
That's right.
So if we went back to alert level 5 at some point, which hopefully we don't, if they're not going to let the family in, at least they need to hire a lot more staff.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us and watching our video. And this was my very first ever live video. My sister's no pro at this. So,
I don't normally cry on live, though.
So she took the lead. Anyway, we love you all.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Please share, comment, post, tag, do whatever you got to do. Let's get this out there. Whew, I'm going to cry again. So that if things go backwards in alert level 5 at some point, another family doesn't have to go what we went through.